Get the recording started. Get the music started. Move to the Hello and welcome everyone to our painting stream. I know we just started a second ago, so probably people haven't jumped on, but this is a little stream where we paint figures, large and small. I'm painting a large scorpion right now but we have other things that we 3D print ourselves, like this crypt. We stream this every Tuesday and Friday, but we're thinking about adding an extra day. But yes, we paint these figures for our D&D stream, which airs on Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern. But we figure since we're painting them, why not let other people see how we do it? Most of this specific scorpion we purchased, but almost everything you see us paint on here, we 3D print ourselves on the printers back there.
Mm-hmm. Like this water wheel?
Like that water wheel.
That's a mill. This is the wheel.
Yes. And if you're interested in where these prints are, you can check out our website, dysondungeons.com. And under the attributions page, we have the 3D model makers who designed them, and they're pretty amazing. Otherwise, you know, you can chat if you feel like it. You can sit back, relax, and watch us paint. We'll sort of talk you through what we're doing as we do it.
Mm-hmm. Nichole will do most of the talking because I can't see the screen with my glasses on.
Nope.
And I can't paint with them on,
So it's a lot of back and forth.
Yeah.
So I spent the last part of last stream just blocking in some really basic colors on this scorpion. It's pretty bright and flat right now. It will be hopefully less bright and flat by the end of the stream. But I have some more of this brass I'm putting in to give it this metallic sheen to do. And then I'm going to do a little touching up and probably start working in some like blacks and greens and stuff to really make it dark and menacing looking. And then eventually tackle the ground, which will be a giant headache. Before I like finish everything up, because it's very close to the ground, but there's actually a gap there, so that makes it hard. But yeah, I'm gonna be starting with the bronze. If anyone watching ever has any questions, let me know and I will forward them to both of us.
Okay. Amazing how much lighter it is before it dries.
Well, did you do that in neutral or dark?
Neutral. It's the dark.
Yeah.
Oh, I did it in dark.
And you have the neutral open right now.
Yeah, so that's going to be terrible. That's why it's so much lighter. Good thing no one was watching.
You should probably get some paper towel too.
Yeah, Wonder where they all are.
I think we used the roll that's down here. That was down here, which makes things very convenient.
There's a little filled up one there.
Yeah, that was my drawing case that's kind of been water damaged. I'm putting some bronze. There's like this underside of this carapace where the underbelly is, and I am.
Is it the soft underbelly?
I guess so, yeah. I'm just trying to get some of the bronze along the edge of the carapace here. Sort of go with the theme I'm going for. It's sort of like a bronze desert scorpion. Giant bronze desert scorpion, I guess. It will be a lot darker as time goes on.
Amazing how much better the right color matches than the wrong color.
That is pretty amazing. I would never have suspected.
Well, you did because you identified the problem.
And I'm invariably getting a couple little spots because there's so many little spindly legs and pieces sticking out of it that I'm gonna have to go in and clean up later. That's okay. It's pretty easy to do that. And the metallics tend to be a little thinner and run a little more than the solid colors, so the bronze is leaving a little bit of a wider line than I necessarily want, and I'm gonna come in afterwards with the red and just work back over it in a few spots to make these a thinner line. Part of the beauty of painting is that if you get a spot wrong or anything like that, all you have to do is let it dry, paint over it, and you're good, basically. One of the nice things I like about it, at least, is I have a tendency to make some mistakes here and there. I'm actually working some bronze in between the carapace here. Give it a little pop. That's going along. It's a little messy. This paint likes to run. That's a-okay. I'm gonna put a tiny bit of this bronze. Sort of slip it in this joint behind the claw right now. Just to give it some consistency. So it's not just the tail that has it. Giving little bronze leg pops here. Just where joints are. Okay, I think I don't want to go too much more with the bronze, otherwise it'll be a little overboard, but it has little bronze pops all over it now. So what I'm gonna do is clean my brush, and while this dries a little, and I'm gonna get a cup together with my scarlet red so I can clean up some of the lines between the bronze and the red. I'll start with the area I did last time. That's a little on the that will be drier. Knock something over, that works too. Give this a good shake. You're basically just getting the roof all done.
Yeah, I'm just washing the brown on the roof.
Yeah, so the
And then I'm
with
going to get out
wood.
the black wash and start doing much washing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we can see the difference. This is what it looks like without wash. As you can see, it's kind of bland. But when you put it on, it not only darkens it, but there's a lot of grain pattern in the printing, and it really highlights the grain.
Since I'm just doing a touch-up with red, I'm gonna only do like a drop or two in here. I find sometimes you don't need nearly as much paint as you think you do, and then other times you need way more paint than you thought you would. Yeah, funny that way sometimes. I'm gonna clean up around the fangs here. They'll need a little more touch-up as time goes on. But the ivory that I did the fangs in has a tendency to run quite a bit. So it was a little messy around the fangs. So I'm just gonna work a little red back in, clean up the base of the fang stalks. I don't know what you want to call them. Okay, that's a little bit. So the fangs are a little more defined now. They have some cleaning up. I got a little bronze on the tip of one, just because it's such a tight model to work around. Now I'm gonna clean up the line of the bronze around the edge of the carapace, and hopefully not cause myself to have to go back yet again and put more bronze on. But, you know, I might do that. There's also a couple spots when I put the base coat in that just didn't quite get full coverage. Now that it's dry, I can see where those spots are and go in and sort of clean them up a little. So I'm just going along the bottom of the carapace, the top of the carapace here, and cleaning up those edges to make the bronze lines a little cleaner, a little straighter. You know, just gently going as I go up. And, you know, some of it won't be too big of a deal. I'm gonna do some black highlighting on some of the carapace lines and stuff to really stand out. Later on, give it a slightly more graphic look. Did you just splatter?
No, just top of it. And,
Why don't you talk through what you're doing?
Well, I just finished putting brown wash on the wood on the roof, as you saw there. And now I'm getting a little drop of black wash. And then cleaning the top of the bottom. You know, it kind of gums up and stuff. So now I got a paper towel full of starch. So this is the water wheel. And it's been washed with brown so that the grain stands out nicely. But, you know, as it turns and the water hits here, it's going to be weathering and getting mossy and stuff. So I'm going to see what happens if I use just a tiny bit of black wash on it, make it look darker and maybe more weathered. And actually, even though it's not dry yet, I think that looks pretty good.
Yeah, that should give a nice little touch of character to it. Feel like a real thing. A lot of what I'm doing is actually, it doesn't show very much, but it'll be sort of important later on as I add more detail to this scorpion. I'm getting very little paint on my brush because I don't want to overwhelm anywhere in particular with splotching. So this is a fairly delicate process. Not too bad, not too difficult if you just take your time and breathe. So I've cleaned up the back of my scorpion a bit here. The lines should be a lot straighter now. Sort of outlining the carapace on top. I'm gonna start moving up and around the tail here. And just clean up a couple spots here and there as I go. It's looking nicely weathered. Your wheel.
Thank you. It's really weathery when you get water pouring on you all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to kind of let this be now.
Let it dry.
Now I'm going to start working on this. There's a lot of black wash
to do.
I mean, all of the red stone and the three colors of gray are all going to be black washed. So that should be, pretty easy.
Just take some time.
A lot of surface area. Use a bigger brush and try not to slop it onto places where I don't want it. So I think I'm going to start down on this end where there's nothing much there and see how it looks on the floor and the pillars and the grinding stone. And if it's looking okay, then I'll go here where all the fiddly bits are. Yeah, it was not good. It was black paint, not black wash.
You grabbed the black paint?
No, I used the bottle cap.
Oh.
Well, it's going to look a lot darker than it will end up. So.
Well, one thing you can also do is once you put it on, you can
highlight.
Add some of it away with paper towel.
Yeah, that's what I did here. Because
it'll help make the highest points stand out a bit more from the lower points, because it will absorb more from the higher parts of the figure. their fangs, I think.
Look at speedy fangs.
Alright. So I'm going to continue with my red wash and start cleaning up the claws and legs here. I'll probably get a base coat on the ground before I go too crazy with detailing, because I'm sure to, like, there's some cleanup on this yellow belly underside of this scorpion here, but I'm sure, 100% sure, that I'm going to get some of the ground color on it. So I'm going to try and bring it in ground color underneath the scorpion and around the feet before I go to overboard with doing detailing. Because if I can at least get the tight spots of the ground painted, then I don't have to worry about splotching something I spent a lot of time working on, and instead only a little time. So once I'm done cleaning up these legs and claws, I'm probably gonna get part of the ground put in. I don't need to, I still handle the base a lot, so I don't want to have it covered in wet paint until later. But the spots like directly underneath the body, around the feet, are gonna be problem areas down the line, so it's better to get them done now. And that's one thing with painting and art in general, is it's generally better to just get a rough of the whole thing before you do some details. Like, you can be doing a portrait of someone, get a ton of beautiful fine detail done on the face, and realize that, like, the neck is way too long and the body and the torso is super short and doesn't match them all. And then you have to redo all the fine work you did on the face just to get it in the right spot on the page to match to fix the body. So I find with art in general, and painting included, that it doesn't usually pay to get hyperfixated on one detailed area right off the bat, but rather to paint a whole cohesive thing, even roughly, and then slowly pare back, get more detail over time. You just end up having to do way less revision work over time that way. And, never be afraid to go back over, erase, anything like that. That is 100% part of it. Your first pencil stroke, your first little piece of paint, whatever it is you're doing, doesn't need to be perfect on the very first application. So I got the left legs done. The claws are getting along. I'm gonna do the right side legs, and then I'm gonna work on the face. And I just want these little flashes of bronze where the joints are, to give you sort of, not only will it give a sense of, the cohesion of the sort of red bronze style I'm going with here, but also it gives you a little visual pop where something important is, like a joint, to give you a sense of the scale and shape of the monster. In this case, giant scorpion. So I'm pretty good on the red for the second. I'm gonna just clean off my brush. And I think, given that this is a scorpion, it should probably have sort of a deserty base, I'm thinking. So, maybe I'll do... Should I do flat earth? Buff, maybe? Get this sort of...
Definitely.
So I'm gonna use this sort of beige, it's called buff, for the base of my scorpion, to give it a desert feel. It could either be like sandstone or sand proper. It's not very well defined on the figure. But, and right now my goal is not to go and paint the whole base, because that would be a little hard for me to handle. Or rather, I'm gonna get the really fiddly parts. So there's actually a gap underneath the scorpion and the ground. So the bottom side of the scorpion's not gonna be super visible, but it'll probably be easier to spot the ground when it's running around. So I'm going to try and get under there without making too much of a mess. I'm also going to get around the feet of the scorpion and under the legs. So, basically all the hardest spots to get, I'm going to try and get. I'm sure I'll have to do touch up, 100% sure. Clean up where I got paint that I didn't necessarily want, but that's okay. Luckily, I just want the base to be one color, so I don't have to do any, as long as I sort of focus the brush down towards the bottom. And just get the paint really spread on the bottom of the figure. I shouldn't accidentally pop up and get paint everywhere where it shouldn't be on the scorpion. So I'm just carefully going in, entering with my brush, and trying to spread around little tiny globs of paint, and never lifting the brush up until it's well out of the underside of the scorpion. And as I do this, it will slowly start to,
Be spectacular.
well, be covered at least. And at a certain point, if I can't notice if it's missing something in that spot, I don't think a casual observer is gonna notice. a couple low points on these legs that are particularly close that I have to be careful of. And I'd love to actually, there's a lot of surface area. I would love to be able to use a larger brush to cover all this surface area. But if I do, a larger brush is going to be wider and be way more likely to hit the legs and the underbelly above it. So I'm just gonna take it nice and slow and easy and sort of work my way out from the center of this scorpion, adding a bit here and there at a time. It's barely visible, but you know, it will show up theoretically. So I'm just trying to get it covered. Now what I might do is start to come out sort of radially from the center to each foot and start to gently cover the area around the feet of this scorpion, trying to not paint the foot itself, but rather the ground around it, and that way when it dries I have like a buffer zone to do the rest of the base. So, like this foot here, I can get some focus. There we go. This back foot, I have put paint around the edge of it, so then when I go in and paint the rest of the base, I don't have to get nearly as close to it. I'm gonna do the same and start moving out from the center and towards the next foot. And then I can fill in between later. And the hardest part on the scorpion is they actually have little two-pronged toes. And I want to make sure I have the ground represented between them without splashing a bunch up onto the foot. And this is my first little splotch.
Aged and weathered mill thing.
Watermill?
Yeah. And it came out pretty well.
Take a look in just a second. Oh yeah, that's looking really good. And when that dries, maybe something you can do once it dries is along the rocks here. You can put some green wash to give some like algae effects.
Yeah, some wash.
Where the water would be running.
That should look good.
But that's looking very nice. And once the roof and wheel are all attached together, it should really come together nicely. I got a couple teeny tiny splotches. Like I kind of knew I would. On sections of the leg, but those will be a lot very easy to just pop in with the red later after it dries and clean up. Getting this ground in is a little harder, so I'm saving the easier part for last because I'm less likely to mess it up.
I have to clean this up.
So we can barely see because the buff is very similar to the white in a lot of ways, but you know, I'm getting some coverage, getting it more consistent, covering up any red splotches that I made earlier, getting the base coat on, things like that. And you know, if there's a couple tiny spots on the base that aren't covered with the buff paint, it's really not going to be a big deal because I'm going to probably put a wash over everything. And when I do that, it's going to fill in some of those little cracks and crevices. Yeah, so it's coming along. Just getting the legs sorted out.
So you think some of that green wash on the stones here?
Yeah, where the water washes up over time, but sometimes it's not there, so there's some moss build up.
That would be good. Have to wait for that to dry, I guess. Still pretty shiny. Oh, well. Now what?
You're gonna have to start figuring out what you're doing next. I mean, there's a number of things that aren't primed, but also need to be glued.
Yeah. I could paint a cat.
A jaguar. Or a panther.
Mm-hmm. Panther and leopard. How can you tell which is which?
By the spots. Yeah, you have to paint the spots. There's also the ox.
What those look like. The oxen free. Which one will we be needing? Do you have any idea?
No clue. Just paint whichever one speaks to you. There's an extra bedroll here. If you want to paint those.
Yeah.
The big extravagant bed. You could paint that if you felt like it.
Some of these have been done before, haven't they?
There's like, not really. There's this one that has a little ivory on the top.
Oh,
But that's about it. I'm kind of ending up just painting the whole base right now. Just because of like sort of how it's spreading naturally and continuing to go around. So. But I'm trying to be especially careful of the feet. I don't want to have to touch them up too much. I definitely have to touch them up a little. Right there, for example. I just got a little along the leg. Not too much. Just a little spot. But these 2 feet are kind of close together, which makes life a little hard. But I'm almost through the woods on these feet.
woodsy feet.
Through the desert on these. I'm gonna clean this brush off, and since I'm at that stage, I'm actually gonna just finish the base, but I'm gonna use a slightly larger brush for the sections that are clear but large. I'm just gonna grab this larger brush, get a nice little bit of the buff paint on it, and start covering up the front and back portions of this scorpion's landscape. Okay, that roughly gets this sandy colored base under here, and it looks a lot cleaner with the base. It's definitely not a final version, but that's a-okay. Since the base is drying, I'm gonna do a little cleanup in a couple areas that I can hit from the top without moving it around too much. That way I can really, I can keep working without getting my hands covered in paint and the model therefore covered in paint, other than where I want it to be covered in paint. So, looking around, I still have a little bronze out, so I'm gonna take my smaller brush. I'm not taking my super fine brush, but just a smaller brush, and redefining a couple spots where I want the bronze to stand out a little better. Particularly on its back where it's most visible. And there's going to be a couple spots to touch up, but I have to touch up some of the legs in red anyway, so I'm not too concerned about that. Just looking around for areas where I think I could use a tiny bit more with the bronze, or maybe I went too far with my cleanup. So, I have this little red and yellow scorpion. Since my ground is still pretty wet in some of the areas, I'm actually going to take the yellow, clean up some of the more exposed belly segments. I had started with the yellow, so it needs the most cleanup. And you're working on some bedrolls to put on the ground, right?
Yep. Well, they are on the ground.
Well, Yeah, for where our characters are camping, for instance, and didn't pack a tent like my character did. Open up this bright yellow. Sort of like a big warning, flashing warning sign for anyone who stumbles on one of these scorpions. And it's a slightly thinner paint. I'm just cleaning up some areas where I want it a little thicker. There's a couple splotches of red that got on it when I did the legs that I want to clean up, and there's actually one tiny exposed area underneath that I didn't get in my first pass. I'm cleaning up and helping define the line between the carapace and the underbelly. Now when this dries, later on I'm actually going to take a black wash, very, very, very small amount, and highlight these underbelly segments. Just putting in a black line along it. Do some of the same with the carapace to really make it sort of stand out. It'll give it a slightly more graphic look than like a realistic look, but I think that it makes it look kind of neat. And it'll be a little more obvious about the structure that you're looking at. So with that in, I'm gonna get the teeniest, tiniest amount of this ivory, clean up a spot or two on the fangs. And this ivory is a nice color. It's sort of this creamy milk color, but it is thin and tends to run. I'm gonna just take a very, very small amount of it and sort of gently put it over the problem areas. There we go. And I just wanted to put a little bit on the tip of the brush because I didn't have that much to clean up with it. Waste not and all that. So, what I'm looking at now is I have the base drying still because there's a lot to cover. And what I kind of I want these claws to be a little more menacing. And the tail to be a little more menacing. I just have a base coat of red on them right now. So what I'm actually thinking of doing is taking this flat black paint, flat being not glossy, and I'm gonna sort of dry brush the front ends of these claws back over the claw a little bit to give them sort of this scraggly gradient where they end in like black pincers and kind of fade into red along as they go back. You know, make them stand out a little, make them look a little creepy maybe. Hopefully, since it is a big giant scorpion. So what I'm doing is I'm getting a very tiny amount of black on the brush, and then I'm gonna brush away on the paper a good portion of it. And that makes it extremely light on the brush. And what that lets me do is put an extremely small, thin amount of paint over the areas that I want them without having a bunch sort of oozing about in areas I don't. And that's generally called dry brushing. And I'm taking my time doing this pretty slow. Hopefully not getting paint on my hands. I think I'm in the clear. And I'm sort of starting in the area I want the most dark and moving out from it in order to sort of create that gradient effect. I think the base isn't fully dry, but it's getting close. The one thing you'll find with dry brushing is there's so little paint on the brush that it actually dries very quickly, surprisingly. So you only have a limited window between when you've brushed off most of the paint and when you can apply it. But just to give you an idea very quickly, there's the focus. On that right claw there, I'm giving it a sort of black, menacing look.
Oh yeah, that's really good.
That's gonna be a work in progress, but it'll take some time. And thank you, UO Gem. I just really want to get some variation in this giant scorpion. But that is dry brushing in a nutshell, basically. Luckily, although not fully dry, the base of this dragon from this giant scorpion is
good species identification there.
I know.
Genus.
Because I've painted it red, I've almost called it a lobster a few times. I caught myself. One thing that you can find sometimes is if you're trying to dry brush a lot of area, even if you're trying to be delicate because you have so little on it, you can take a slightly larger brush like this one, and as long as you're dabbing off enough, you can get a good effect. with that dry brush. So it's going to have sort of this speckled appearance to it, which I kind of like on a giant insect sometimes. You know, I mean, not in real life, but at least in a fantasy setting. I'm not a bug person by any stretch. So, what are you working on in your with your bedrolls?
I have one done.
You have a whole bedroll done?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that goes pretty quick. Let's go.
I decided to do the one where the pillow had already been sort of painted.
I would tell you to lift it up to the camera, but it's not really liftable right now.
Not at the moment. The edges are wet. I think I might give it kind of a blue wash, isn't there? Grayish blue wash.
Yeah, we have a blue wash that you could use. Somewhere around here. Here. It's sort of a... Oh, it's blue-gray.
Mm.
So it is a gray bluish wash.
So I'm thinking of not using it.
Of not using what?
Just a second. Touch up these. Oh, there is a bedroll laying on grass.
A nice simple print that we had. But something that can be added to pretty much any camp scene. You know, if you're sleeping and are ambushed by bandits or something like that.
Yeah, I like the way that comes out.
So,
Yep,
I
it's
have
much more menacing.
one claw on dry brushed and one claw with the black. And you can really start to see the difference between the two. I'm not quite sure I'm done. I'm gonna work up the claw a little bit more, I think. But it really makes it stand out as a dark and menacing weapon. I feel like.
You have a purple bedroll.
Yeah. I mean, it's fabric. You can do anything. Pretty much any color. Purple would be historically a very fancy bedroll, since purple is a very hard dye to produce. But also, you know, wizards. So.
Yeah, this isn't a very fancy run here, so I'll probably do something boring. This is very not fancy one.
Just trying to choose a color.
Yeah, dark green maybe with an olive drab wrap.
What was the colors on the other one? Like a blue with a brown.
Well, the underside is brown. When it's folded over, that's the ground cloth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the quilted inside. Yes,
Is the green not the ground cloth?
the green is grass.
Oh, is it?
The whole thing's it's laying on grass.
I was thinking because you had put it on a grass map, maybe. But yeah, it would blend in that way with the map itself. I think that's good for that cloth.
Yeah, that's good for that cloth.
Alright.
That came out really nice.
That's one dry brushed cloth. Done. And I'll move on to the other one and it'll get equally, hopefully, equally menacing. Dark and menacing.
Mm-hmm. And if not, that's the side I'm going.
So, I'm gonna be starting again from sort of the center of the claw where I want it to be the darkest and moving out. And the goal is just to keep this brush very light on the paint. But you just get little tiny flicks of it. That you sort of build up and out with. So I want like the ends of the claw to be the most black, and it sort of becomes less black the further out from that claw you get. It's not gonna be like a full, like, clean gradient when you do it like this, but I want it to look sort of dark and brutal. So, I don't want a clean gradient between two. I want it to look sort of battle scarred. Dangerous. And now that I have one painted, I also want it to look kind of even. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect by any stretch. This is a wild monster. It is definitely not going to look the same perfectly between both claws. I just want it to have the same sort of vibe.
Yeah. Those claws look really good. You're going to do the same thing to the feet then?
I might. So there's the claws done in black. And I think I'll do the feet as well. But what I'm going to do for the feet, because they're so much tinier, I'm definitely not going to use this bigger brush. But also, I'm going to paint the tips of them black beforehand without dry brushing. And that'll give me sort of a area of leeway to then go up with a dry brush to give that sort of effect. So, what I'm gonna do is just get a tiny bit of paint. I'm leaning over for this. And I just want like the tips, and I am going to get some on my newly painted base, and that's a-okay. I'm gonna try not to, but I will most likely get some here and there. And after, as I work up, I'm gonna just try and use a very light touch, a little paint, just to get this sort of similar appendage effect that I have on the claw. Like that, you're thinking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good.
And after I'm done with this, I'll have to go in and clean up the base around the toes a little bit, but I already sort of knew I was in for that. So that's a little comparison of the feet. The front two have a little black on them, the back two don't. It's going to make them stand out a little bit from the ground and make all of the appendages look consistent. And it really doesn't take all that much paint to do this. So you gotta be just managing your the volume of your brush is one of the big things. That you can learn for painting. So that side has no black feet. And this side does. And once I darken up the main body of this scorpion, it's gonna look a lot more cohesive and menacing. Because right now I have dark, moody appendages and a bright, shiny body. It has a little bit of a clash look right now. Clash of looks. But I have to do one little bit at a time.
Give the ivory there.
And there are definitely some spots to clean up. Okay. The downside with getting sort of this modeled look is it has a tendency to not be very precise. Because you're trying to just cover a large surface area, like cover the high points without filling in the low points too much. And so it gets a little messier than you maybe want, but that's what touch-up's for. Okay, so there is a black-footed scorpion. And that will set to dry for a second so I can clean it up later. What I'm gonna do quickly is clean my brush off, grab a tiny bit of this scarlet I still have out. And I know there's a couple spots on the feet that were sort of a standout thick spot for me. So I'm gonna quickly do that. Let that dry. And I need to use the bathroom. So while that's drying, and before I can do the base. There it is. Alright, so we have the start of our menacing parts of our scorpion. Set that there. Clean my brush off. Are you okay running the show while I
Well, sure. I can continue to talk to our audience. Sorry, I was painting a book. Yeah, and making a mess on my hands. It would paint. So this one bedroll here, had a pillow and it's just folded over. And it's all pretty simple. That's the bottom of it, and that's the inside of it. This one is very much the same, except it's got a wizard staff on one side and a book and a bottle. So I'm going to paint it wizard fancy colors. purple and red.
I'm back.
Welcome back.
All right. So, my next task on this scorpion is I'm gonna clean up around the feet. Just do a couple of touch-ups. And then what I think I'm gonna do is use some careful application of black wash to bring out highlights and change the look of this scorpion quite a bit. It's a fairly simple structured creature, if not complicated in total, like body shape. But it's not like there's a bunch of different styles of limbs or multiple heads or anything like that. So I'm just taking the buff and cleaning up some of the spots I might have gotten black splotches around the feet.
Okay.
Some sort of cat running around upstairs, maybe a dog. Okay. So the area around the feet are cleaned up. Give it a more consistent look down there. And I think the next thing I'm going to tackle is this yellow underside. Right now I just have a basic yellow undercoat on it. What I'll probably do here is there's a couple things. One, I want to tone down that yellow a fair amount, because there's not a lot of things outside of a couple birds that are quite as bright yellow. So, for that, I'm going to take a little bit of this black wash, which I always seem to cover my hands with whenever I open it. I'm not quite sure how I managed to do that, but there you go. And I'm going to take a small brush and just cover some of this to tone down the whole thing, make it a little less vibrant. And as I go, I don't want it pooling too much because I'm actually going to do some black highlight lines within the underside here, but I don't want bright, vibrant yellow, and I want a little inconsistency in the looks. Because it's an organic creature, and it shouldn't be one consistent color. So you can sort of see it's getting this sort of dirty mottled look that I'm going for. Because this is sort of the fleshy underbelly of the creature. And I'm going to gently try and get it on the underside of the scorpion without getting too much on the ground. Darker and more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks like it's been scuffing along the desert floor.
Mm-hmm. That helps with the basic extremeness of the yellow, but there's actually a lot of small lines in here that I want to have stand out particularly more. And the way I'm going to do that is by trying to put in very finely some black lines.
Clean these cups.
And he's off to clean some cups. What I'm going to start with here are a much finer brush, about twice as fine as the one I was just using. And I don't want very much paint at all on it. And I don't need to make like a full line. I just want the... What you looking for? You can use one I've been using. But I might need it at some point.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So, what I'm trying to do here is just darken up these segments on the back underbelly, just to give you a little visual of where they separate from one another when you're looking at a distance. I'm trying to do that very gently so that I don't get too much paint where I don't want it.
Oh, yeah, that came out nicely in the back. It looks much less yellow.
And I'll probably have to carry that look throughout other parts of the scorpion here. So this is going to be a bit of a slow process. But that's okay. A tiny amount of black can go a long way in delineating an area. And there's a lot of carapace to delineate on this it can be a little subtle, but it makes these different sections stand out more, even with this sort of darkened black wash.
Let me see how it's going. I see what you're doing. Okay.
And there's going to be a part where I hit pretty soon here that I can't really reach underneath anymore, but it's also not super visible. So I'll probably end up letting that be. As you might be able to hear, we have a cat visiting somewhere.
Just walking out the door.
I'm being a little quiet because this is a very delicate procedure as I work around different parts of this scorpion. Just giving him little black highlights in areas that I want to delineate between parts of the carapace. Much a small spot. That's not That's an easy to clean spot though, so not too bad. Getting some of the top here.
Oh, okay. A little stripe there. Very nice.
And around the edges and just to really make the areas pop.
Mm-hmm. Around the joints.
Mm-hmm. And the bronze.
Mm-hmm.
Makes it pop a bit more. So, sort of working in little areas of black that will help sort of signal your mind what's happening where.
Going along really nicely.
Thank you.
Looking very much not like a lobster anymore. I mean, very much like a very sinister scorpion.
Right, that's my goal. Thank you. we're hitting 5 o'clock. We have a fairly busy night ahead of us, so I am going to start cleaning up here.
Yep, I will be
still-
soon too.
I'd say there's still about a day's worth of work, at least, left on this scorpion, but I am moving in the right direction with it. Get a focus going. So it's coming along. It's I'm building up slowly. I'm going to take a picture of it. But yeah. So thank you anyone who is watching. We will be on our live show this Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern, where you might see some of the stuff we painted. I think it sounded like we were gonna get in combat soon, so we'll see. Anyway, thank you all for coming, and have a good weekend.